This is Joe Vaclavik from CME Group here in Chicago. Soybean market was mostly higher here on Thursday. We've actually seen a nice little retracement rally during the last few sessions. I would probably argue that the market has actually held together fairly well. When you look across the grain complex, the corn market has traded into some fresh contract lows. Both of the winter wheat markets, Chicago and Kansas City, have been very, very weak. Yet the soybean market has been able to avoid a trade down to even its June lows of this year and has bounced just a little bit here this week. Ownership, I think, is an issue in the soybean market and something that I think does matter. Farmer ownership of soybeans here in the U.S. appears to be very, very minimal. And granted, that is going to change when harvest comes and we see record acreage harvested here in this country. But for the moment, physical ownership of those old crop beans is very minimal. I think farmers sold out early, and I think it's a factor that could potentially limit the downside. We don't have a big, long trapped in this soybean market on the physical side like we do in, say, the corn market, where farmers own just what appears to be a huge amount of old crop corn still. So I think that that's something that could potentially be a positive factor here overall in the general landscape of things. Maybe something that's helped that market avoid a move into some new lows. We had the Pro Farmer Crop Tour continue here this week. You know, most of the pod counts for soybeans were lower in the majority of areas versus last year. I don't know how that's going to translate into final yield, but it may be something to be optimistic about in regard to the market. If the soybean yield comes up light or a bushel or two lighter than what USDA had projected, that could translate into a very different market and a much higher market very, very quickly. On the flip side of that, if for some reason the bean yield ends up higher than USDA's most recent projection, I think you could see a digestion certainly back into that $8 range very, very easily. Again, Joe Vaclavik from CME Group here in Chicago.